Welcome everyone to another episode of the Spiritual Sisterhood. Today I have with me my very good friend Carolyn Theresa Simon, and we met actually at Cure.fit. So it's really nice to have her back again. She's been a yoga teacher for a very long time. She's also someone that's very enthusiastic about healthy eating and mitahar. And she's also an overall lovely soul and somebody that can always share the positivity and light with us. So I'm really glad to have her on this episode today. And we're going to learn about her take on yoga, and understand more from her on the world of spirituality. So, Carolyn, thank you for being with us today. It's really nice to see you
Thank
after
you
so
so
long.
much. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. And namaste, everyone. So lovely to meet Anvita again on virtually after a long time.
Yeah, and I think one thing I remember, Kara. I don't know if you remember this, but on the last day we met, you gave me your Cure.fit T-shirt, and I
Mhm.
still have it, and it fit me really well, and it didn't fit her, so I was like, I'm dropping this T-shirt. It's now mine. So, yeah, I think that was the last time we met. So it's really good to
Yeah,
see
yeah.
this now.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's dive right into understanding more about you and getting started with the interview. So the first question that we usually ask is, the series is called Spiritual Sisterhood. So, what does the word like spirituality mean to you, and how do you feel that you kind of embody your spirituality? Like, what's your take on that?
So, spirituality to me is a concept of oneness with everything. So, it could be with the body, mind, and breath just when we're doing an asana, or it could be while interacting with people around, with nature. So, just feeling that sense of oneness.
Mm.
That is what spirituality means to me. And how I embody it would be through my practices, just in my whole life, actually, my day to day life, because every time there is some sort of interaction that's happening. So
Mm.
if we try to understand what's around, try to understand where they are coming from or the thing is coming from, and try to connect with it, I think
Yeah.
that for me is spirituality.
Yeah, that's so well said, because I think, a lot of people think that spirituality is just about themselves, but I love that you connected it with everyone else. And you said that it's this feeling that we have when we're interacting with people. And I also think sometimes because we don't feel that oneness, we tend to think of somebody else as separate from us. And then once we realize that, oh, we're all actually the same thing, then it's easier to be. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and we
totally
don't
agree.
think too much about why the person is doing a certain thing. We don't tend to judge because we just know that this happens to us, this happens to them. We're all going through the
Yeah,
same thing.
so true, so true. And I want to ask you, like, I'm sure there must have been a long journey of getting in touch with yourself, exploring yoga, and also what yoga means for yourself. So, like, take us through sort of how did your journey or tryst with yoga really begin, and how far ago, like, how long ago was it, and what did you learn through your whole journey so far?
Yes, for sure. So it's been a long journey, but it started off in school. Actually, we were, I would say, more like forced to practice yoga because they thought it would help us do well in our exams and everything. So we had this pranayama session every Thursday, and I didn't enjoy it one bit. So I would try to go late for the session, or we also had to wear special clothes. So we had a uniform to wear just for the yoga class.
Mm.
And I would try to forget or tell them I forgot in my uniform. So we couldn't do the rest of the asana. There was like it was a very short sequence,
Yeah.
asanas and some pranayama, but I absolutely hated it. So it was a very weird introduction for me. But that, I think I didn't really understand the main idea of the practice back then.
Mm.
It was
Yeah.
just because I was used to, and this was we were very young. I think fifth grade we started, and
Yeah.
we were used to playing around, doing a lot of things. So this felt like being caged
Mystery.
and nothing to do. Yeah.
Mm.
So that was the whole idea when it started.
Yeah.
And then after that, so my family and I was also introduced to movement very young, so in the form of sport and dance, everything. So there was this phase when I couldn't do anything because I had a very bad injury, and
Oh.
at that point in time, I was getting very frustrated and irritated, and that was unlike me because I think doing a lot of activities helped there. That's when I understood that this is how that has impacted me. So that's when I slowly started practicing the asana bit. That was from my mom used to go to a yoga class. So then I just joined her one day and I had nothing else to do. So I said, okay, let me just
I'm also coming.
let me just keep going for this a few days. And the doctor also recommended just for keeping it would help.
Yeah.
So there I saw a lot of benefits. And after that, I feel like it's always been a journey of being inspired by someone. Almost most of the courses that I've done, it's because I saw somebody living in a certain way, or the qualities that they had, or some close friends who had changed after practicing or becoming teachers and meeting teachers who had practiced with here. I just felt like I want what they are having.
They are so like joyous and happy, and I want little, yeah.
Exactly. So my first teacher, he was not disturbed by anything. Sometimes people would come late, throw their mats early in the morning, and he was not disturbed by anything. First few classes, he was so calm, and I was like, wow, how can a person be like that? So I think after that, my journey is just being inspired by people, and even finding sources. If I had to understand deeper, it was always being inspired by that person and trying to understand more from them or learn more from them. So that's what's led me to all my teachers, and that's how the whole practice started.
Yeah, that's so nice. I love that. Initially, you had like an awkward relationship with yoga, and then it kind of evolved into this. So
Yeah.
I feel like, this happens often to a lot of us where we are introduced sometimes to yoga in school and we may not understand it fully. So it kind of goes above our head. So, like, do you, from your experience, think it could have been done any differently, or do you think like yoga should be taught any differently in schools for it to have a deeper impact? Because so that we actually understand what it means.
So I think forcing something on someone doesn't help at all. So maybe if it could be integrated into the system, that would definitely help. And how they portray it is also important, rather than portraying it earlier, especially in India. At that time, not too many people, young people, did yoga. It was more like old people. They couldn't do anything else. So that's how we also saw it. We said, no, it's not meant for us.
Right.
So if they could integrate it, and not just the physical aspect, but everything. So slowly integrate it into the system in parts, maybe not as a whole, because it'd be difficult for a young child to take that in, but trying to integrate it into the system rather than just bombarding them with so much information that
they get overwhelmed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a great idea. Slowly putting it in, not just in as a practice, but in their classes, trying to bring in some awareness while they are doing their practices or studying, anything like that. I think that would be a good way, and I hope that happens. It's happening, I think, in a very small way now, because I also take some classes for universities and students. Some of them look like they've been funny. But
yeah. No, I think I really like that you said integrating it, because this reminds me, like, when we were in school and we used to do yoga, I think one of the reasons I really loved it was because before a test they would be like, come on, let's chant Om 3 times, so your test will go. So we associated with like luck and positivity. So we were like, oh, we say Om and our test will go. So there was this, I don't know, positive image that had been created. So I think, like you said, putting it in places throughout our school activities will really help us to see it as a whole, and not just like इस period में हम yoga करेंगे or something like that.
I think you're the perfect example of it as well. Growing up in an institute, you must have been exposed to yoga very young and growing with it.
Yeah, I think I like you said, I think it depends on how it's introduced. Even for me in the very initial years, like when I was 5 or 6, I was like, Arey, like I would rather be like a ball of energy and, do something. But then I think the way it was introduced and the benefits were explained, and I was like, oh, it's actually good for me. So let me not run away from it. But yeah, I think just we need fantastic teachers and more support, and I'm sure it'll happen.
Yeah, I think that's also important. Rather than just trying to give them more information, the person has to be inspired by whoever's teaching them. So
exactly,
that's very important for us to bring in the right kind of teaching and the right source to be able to.
And I think that happens when you feel the magic yourself, like when we're teaching, I think we're so like passionate and driven that, wow, this has like changed my life. So I'll tell you about it. And I think that little spark kind of carries through. So absolutely, I feel like yoga teacher trainings, like even after you become a teacher, are so important to help you to learn how to teach and pass on that spark, maybe. So yeah, I think that's something that can help. But I also want to ask, you said that there were so many different teachers that inspired you along your journey, and how your first teacher kind of was so calm and quiet. Is there anybody that currently you really look up to as a perfect example of a yogi, or a perfect example of somebody you want to be like or you look up to?
So currently, well, I would have to say Sadhguru.
I know you went for Mahashivratri also.
Yeah, it was so beautiful.
Yeah.
I just admire Sadhguru, the way he lives life, the way he carries himself. Everything is just so beautiful.
Yeah. And even the way Isha Foundation has grown, it goes to show what a person with that much love for yoga can really do. So I think he's a good idol to have.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think my next question is more about, how you see yoga now and how you kind of feel about yoga teaching now. So do you think that there has been like any, I don't know, cultural appropriation around yoga? Do you feel it's being taught in the right way? Like, what are your thoughts around the way yoga is being taught at the moment?
I think it completely depends on the practitioner who's coming in, because initially when they come in, if you try to give them something that they don't want, they're just going to resist and move away. So it's a little sad sometimes what comes up when you ask them what their expectation is or what they want out of the class.
Yeah.
But what I try to do is slowly try to change the same idea of integration. So initially they might come in with a different idea, and then slowly try to get them to explore everything else. And they might not necessarily like it. So
Yeah.
sometimes I've noticed that most people like doing different things, maybe a bit of chanting in between the class, or maybe some meditation, or maybe they want to know more. So they come and ask, what is this about? Like the other day, I was teaching them about a different style of yoga. So then they wanted to know what Ida and Pingala was. So try to get them to be a little curious rather than give them something that they don't want. So I think that's been my approach to teaching. And I respect everyone who comes in, even with something that might not, like if they come in as they want yoga as a sort of exercise, or something to lose weight or anything. It doesn't matter what they come with, but I just try to give them the options, and if they want, they can choose it. And if I see that they like it, then I give them more of something that could be very different from what they initially came for.
Yeah, I think that's something that's so important, because very often, we have an ideology already of what we think the student should receive, and the student has a different expectation, and then there's like a mismatch. So I like that you said that we should kind of see who's coming to us and what do they want to learn, and kind of not force our ideologies upon them, which is so important. That reminds me, when I initially started out, I definitely was like, no, everyone has to know the philosophy, and I'm going to tell you even if you don't want to know.
I know, I love that about you. I remember the first day I met you also, we were like, yes, we have to get more philosophy.
Yeah, but I think, coming to your point, I think it's also important to recognize some people may not have an aptitude for that, or may not be interested, so even though it is important, it's also like how you kind of deliver it, like you said, and at what depth are they ready to take it. So I've also learned to not thopify it when if they didn't.
Also depends on in the phase that they're at, because sometimes people come for something and then later they want to come. So when I see that interest, that's when I get excited that okay, they're also interested.
Yeah,
I think that's the perfect time to actually start sharing a little more with them.
yeah. And have you noticed, like, a lot of times we say that yoga is a lifestyle and yoga is something that we live. So have you noticed like students taking an interest in like living it as a lifestyle? And if so, like, what are some of the tips that you give them that, hey, here's you can do to kind of make it a lifestyle and not just a practice?
So in terms, yeah, I always think I feel like sometimes it happens unconsciously because they're doing some practices, it extends to their daily life. So that happens quite naturally. But otherwise, I think for me, what has helped is being very disciplined with practice and everything. With my day, in terms of how I plan my day, that has really helped. Understanding different concepts, journaling has helped a lot. So I think these are aspects that can be brought in. But in terms of extending it as a lifestyle, I think it also comes from curiosity. If they want to understand more, a little bit about, how ahimsa works and how it gets extended to their everyday activities in terms of interactions, in terms of food. So I think, that should also come naturally. But what I follow is try to be very disciplined and also try to learn a lot. So every day I try to learn and then try to understand again from the people that I'm really inspired by. Just try to understand more from them.
That's so nice. I think it's so true that you said discipline, because I think that's something that especially when we go for our TTC or we're doing our training, it's so like discipline is the number one thing. I mean, you have to be on time. You can't be like 1 minute late. And I think getting that initial training sets us up to then display that, after becoming a teacher and kind of continue on that path. So what would you say to somebody who's kind of struggling with discipline, especially as a yoga practitioner? Because a lot of students say, I just can't do it every day. I'll do it once a week or like, in the middle. But this whole everyday thing, not a lot of people are able to follow. So what are your tips for kind of building on discipline or just creating a disciplined habit?
So discipline, I feel that also shouldn't be forced because I've also done it myself. Sometimes I say, okay, I'm going to do 2 hours of practice this time, and then in the evening I'm going to again do meditation, this, that. Most times it doesn't work like that. For me, what's helped is because I've noticed it, I've experienced it. I've noticed the difference that the practice does and how my day goes when I haven't done a practice or when I haven't done anything in the morning. I just get up and go work on something. So I've noticed the difference. So I think that's helped. So it will take some time for you to understand how that practice or any activity is impacting the individual, and then they'll be able to, it will come naturally again, that it will fall into place. So in the beginning, I would just say, in the beginning, it takes some time. So try to follow a routine at least for a week or two and see how it's helping. If it's not helping, then don't follow it at all. And then I think that can build up. So try to pick up small things. So change a few things at a time rather than changing the whole day and saying this is how it should be. So I think that would definitely help.
I think
try
that
to approach it in parts and then keep doing it for some time until you see you're able to tell whether it's helping, and then continue what is really helping.
Yeah, I think that's so true, because sometimes we go like, today, now I'll change my entire schedule and this is my new schedule, tomorrow, new me.
Yeah.
First of the month, especially, it's like, especially first of Jan and, the first quarter is just like new me, new year and this whole thing. But I think you said a very important point there, which is take one thing and like just make that one change and then add one more and then add one more. And I think that snowball is what actually ends up working. So definitely. And I think also you said that, if it's helping you, then you will feel like continuing it. Because half the time we don't bother to see that with or without it, what's the difference. And then that makes it challenging for us to understand. So I think that's a very important point. Yeah. Okay, cool. So now I want to ask you, because I was scrolling through your Instagram and looking at your older pictures, and I was like, wow, you like literally, I know you love cooking, but I saw like even older posts that had a lot of cooking, and I'm sure you also like follow the yogic diet and mitahar. So just wanted to ask you, how can somebody make some healthy changes to their diet? And are there any rules of thumb that you follow when it comes to your diet? And just how do you go about your own mitahar practice?
So yeah, I used to, I still am quite crazy about food. I used to be a food writer earlier. So I used to visit restaurants and try out different cuisines. So for
the best
me,
job, I feel.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, what's helped is again intuitive eating. So trying to understand how I would feel after eating a certain ingredient or a certain meal. So that's helped. And also, I feel like as we do these practices, slowly we generally move away from food that might not be conducive to the practice. Like sometimes I eat a very heavy meal, and if I eat something that is not I would say full of life, then I feel very lethargic, like how we tamas sick food. So I feel like I don't feel like doing any of the practices, and that impacts my whole day. So I think just being very intuitive and also eating more of food that has life. So fresh food and local food. So now every day I go to the market, get whatever is there.
How nice.
That's my favorite activity, grocery. So yeah, eating fresh food, and apart from that, just eating with awareness rather than doing a lot of things. And I might not be a good example because today, just before this, I had my breakfast. I just drank.
Yeah, but today is a hectic day, so it's fine.
But otherwise, I try to spend some time with food, and I really enjoy having that time. In terms of cooking, I only cook when I really want to. So if I have that, some days I'm very excited. I say, okay, I'm going to make something. So that's when I go and cook. Otherwise, I don't just cook for the sake of cooking. I'm lucky to have somebody who would be able to help otherwise. But I just cook when I really enjoy the process. So at that time, I just go and make something.
What are your tips? Because I've tried to enjoy cooking for so long and it just doesn't, like, I'm constantly like which utensil and which, like I get a little confused in the kitchen. So can you shed light on how is cooking like a yogic process for you? How does it make you feel? Because if I maybe hear it from you, I'll also be inspired to see it differently. So what are the aspects of cooking or, just being in the moment cooking that you really enjoy?
So for me, what I really enjoy is how the ingredients come together. Again, the whole concept of, oneness. So we put in different things and each have their own properties, but how it comes together in the form of a dish. So that's what I really enjoy. And I also try to make things that I really love. Most times I do the same thing or try to experiment with recipes. So I try to challenge myself. Sometimes I do a lot of vegan cooking now. I'm not vegan, but I just enjoy experimenting with something, and where there are some restrictions, so I can't put in.
So it forces you to be even more creative with cooking.
Creativity. Exactly. You said it. So it just brings out something in me where I'm not thinking of anything else. I'm just there and trying to make something exciting.
Okay, now I'm gonna try and do it that way with that intention, and I'll try putting more restrictions so it feels like that challenge, because usually I'm just like, oh, can't understand, let me just go and do something else.
Maybe start with something you really enjoy.
And cake or something. Let me see, some dessert or something. But I really like that you said that, you believe in intuitive eating, because I think a lot of times we look at fad diets or we look at something on the internet and we think that it's applicable to our bodies. So would you tell people listening that it's important to kind of maybe look into Ayurveda, look into your particular body before you just follow anything randomly off the internet? So what are your thoughts around that?
Definitely. I think that also helps to understand things better. So if you pick up an ingredient, try to understand the taste and look at how it's going to impact one's body. I think that helps to really change. So even I've noticed that it doesn't happen consciously. Sometimes I just make some changes to maybe if I'm making a tea, because it's summer, I automatically reach out to maybe put in cumin rather than if I'm putting a more heating ingredient. So understanding ingredients have helped me a lot. Also to understand my state of mind, because through Ayurveda, it's important to understand that everything is connected. So whatever we put in, it might affect something else or something else later on. So just understanding ingredients have really helped. I have a lot to learn with Ayurveda. There's a lot to learn. It's so fun.
It is.
I feel like it's a beautiful science. Even the doctor that I go to for everything. So I go to a very amazing doctor here in Bangalore. His name is Krishna Kumar. So even with the smallest issue, he can tell through something else. With when Nadi Parikshna, he'll tell me, okay, this is what could have happened. I'm like, wow, how do you know this?
It's like, are you a magician? How do you...
Actually, it's very beautiful. I think if we can get deeper into understanding ingredients better and just understanding the whole on how to plan our schedule in line with Ayurveda, I think you also do a lot of posts on that. That would definitely.
Yeah, I think so true. I think, because sometimes we don't know these Ayurvedic principles for whatever, maybe we haven't looked into it or we're just not aware. And the more I research, I'm like, wow, like these small, small changes, if we sync our day with nature, can make such a big difference. So I just feel like if we have more education on it or just some more information, it can make a huge difference to all our lives and just help us to, like you said, be more local, be more aware of what's happening in our seasons and our bodies, and then kind of adapt to it that way. So yeah. And along the same lines, I want to ask, do you think there's a lack of information on the Indian sciences like Ayurveda, for example? And how do you think this can be more popularized or at least shared more? Because usually if we fall sick or something happens, we, immediately allopathy tends to be the first, point of intervention. So how do you think we can make Ayurveda more mainstream instead of like it being an alternative thing that we do sometimes?
So that even I haven't been able to understand completely. For me, it happened quite naturally because my whole family, being from Kerala, also my whole family is used to, following some Ayurvedic principles. So even when we fall sick, my grandmom tells us, this is what you should be doing. So we've been following that. But I would say listen to your granny.
She knows.
Yeah, she really knows because a lot of things, there have been times when I've tried allopathic medicines earlier and it's never helped. And then later I moved to Ayurveda. And I see Ayurveda is more of a preventive approach rather than immediately solving the problem. So that's helped me not just at that instance, but later on in the future. So I'm trying to figure out how to bring in. I try to share how much ever I can, and I try to lead people through the right sources. But it still has a long way to go. Now, slowly, I think it's picking up.
Yeah.
With curcumin and turmeric latte.
I think that it's really funny. Like sometimes I'll see a lot of Indians also like after, getting used to this, a lot of, how do I say this? Like you see these things happening abroad and then you be like, now we agree or, so I'm just like, I wish we would agree without needing approval from abroad. So,
but that's been happening for too long.
Hopefully in the next 100 years in our lifetime it'll change.
A lot of people are coming down to learn, so that's amazing. Even the ashram that I studied at, there were about 90 of us for the course and 60 were from outside of India. So that's a good sign at least.
Yeah. And I think some of them are so enthusiastic, like, they'll learn full Sanskrit. They'll really like try to imbibe the culture. And I'm just like, wow, this must be hard for you, but you're still doing it. Amazing. And I just feel like sometimes that's what I mean. Sometimes we don't value our culture and then because they understand it or they, take the effort, so they get it. And we still have to, do some more work there. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really true. We don't really value what we have. We have a lot in terms of knowledge, and we have some amazing people. There are some brilliant teachers here in India as well. Most of them they haven't really put themselves out there. I think that's so help people discover these great teachers.
Yeah, so true. And I wanted to ask, this is a theme that I've spoken about with Navita and Parmita Malvika, the previous guests also. I think, there's a lot of yoga becoming a business and yoga becoming sort of like a commercial enterprise. And which, even we were part of a big company that was using yoga as a product. But how do you, what do you think are the sort of positives and the negatives of this happening when we commercialize yoga? Like, what are your thoughts around this?
So I think it mainly depends on the impact that it's creating, even with big companies that are popularizing yoga in a different manner. I think it's somewhere people are at least getting introduced to yoga, and then slowly some of them, maybe not all of them, will try to understand a little more. So same with classes that I told you. So people will come with a different intention, and then they'll see how it's impacted them and want to learn about a different aspect of it. So I don't really think it's wrong. It's not completely wrong, but sometimes it gets a bit much when they're trying to promote the wrong things.
Right.
So that is a little bit, I would say, misleading, and people just fall for it and think that this is all it's about. So
Right.
slowly trying to also educate them about other aspects, that is important. So there should be a sort of learning curve. It's not that it's just very stagnant. You just teach them the same thing rather than helping them out when they're prepared for more or they want to learn more. So that's important. Bringing in that knowledge is, I think, where the gap is now currently.
I think that's so true because, like you said, the best positive is that so many people who may not have otherwise seen it get access to it, and they're able to see it from a much more macro lens, because otherwise just individual classes hard to reach such a large audience. So I 100% agree. And I feel like how you said that there's that gap of lack of depth. I think, like we'll take everyone on the surface, and then if somebody wants to go deeper, it's very rare to then find people that'll help you go deep. So yeah, I think that's somewhere that if we can just use yoga and show it in its entirety, then I think we can like really do a service for people. So 100% agree there. Yeah. And like now that you're also sort of, you've been self-employed before, you've been in places where you've kind of run your own business. What are your like thoughts around being like this kind of a spiritual entrepreneur? Are there challenges that come with being like, we're not entrepreneurs in the typical sense because we're in the space of health and wellness. So what have been sort of your challenges or some high points by being a spiritual entrepreneur?
So I would say initially it was very difficult to make people understand. And when I just started off, I was very excited. So I was trying to impose things on people. Even my own family, I was telling them, no, do this, wake up at this time, and nobody followed anything. And later on, I feel like now the world has embraced. I think we've also, a lot of people have spent more time with themselves and understood how important it was. So this past 1 year, at least, the world has embraced this whole industry of wellness and yoga. So there's a lot of importance given to it now. So now it's a lot easier for me to interact with people. More than me reaching out, there are a lot of people reaching out saying, we want to do sessions here at corporates or in schools. So everything has changed. The whole dynamics of this industry has changed a lot in the past 1 year. Earlier, it was very different. There were a lot of challenges in trying to make people understand the importance, but now people have automatically started embracing this, the different principles of yoga and wellness.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Somehow like this is one positive effect of the lockdown, that people have, like you said, spent so much time with themselves that they realize that we need this tool to help us understand who we are and kind of give us that healing and just give us that time to ourselves. So you're absolutely right. One of the positive impacts has been that there's this upsurge of demand in yoga. Then in comparison to earlier, we would have to sort of reach out and say, hey, this is good for you. Now people are like, I know this is good for me. I need it, So definitely that difference has been there.
Even with my own family, like they've been coming and asking me, teach us a bit of this. So that's been very beautiful for me.
Yeah, I think when that happens, then okay, something's really happening, right? Because otherwise, when I think this, when you have a yoga teacher at home, it's always like, yeah, she's anyway there, so we learn when we have to. But then when you see them actively taking interest, that if this is happening to them, it's likely happening across the world also. So there's that shift. Yeah. And I think sort of now my next few questions are going to be more about the future and how, you see yourself shaping up and how you want to add value to the world. So I know there are a lot of like causes that are dear to you and things that you believe in, but if you could take yoga and the yogic teachings and use that to really make some change in the world, what would that be? It could be anything, like say the environment or like some access to education that you believe in. But is there one cause in particular that you really feel strongly about and that you want to impact through yoga?
I would say actually a lot of different causes. Even one concept, like even a simple concept in yoga, could be tagged to so many different causes. So I think some of the causes that I'm really passionate about are education for sure, because this is going to be the future. If we can ingrain a few concepts of yoga, that a little bit of spirituality in all of them, I think that's going to really change the world. So education would be the first. And also relating concepts to ahimsa and reducing consumption, as well as looking at production, so sustainability. So those are concepts that, but the very first would definitely be education.
Yeah. So I think that's bang on, because it is the future generation. And if we get that right, then at least we know that, what's coming is going to be happening in the right way, without which it's a little dicey to wonder what's going to be happening in the field of education. So 100%. And do you feel like systems are going to be online? I mean, now considering that a lot of schools have been shut, and colleges also are like kind of open, kind of shut. So do you think that a lot of yoga teaching will now just happen online, especially in the education domain?
I think yes, there's definitely been a change, and I've been really happy because I've been able to practice with teachers from around the world that I've only dreamt of practicing with earlier, because going there, spending some time wouldn't be possible back then. So it's definitely helped with getting access to a lot more information with everything, a lot of online courses, a lot of channels that are coming up. So that's helped. But I think that we still need some sort of teaching that happens offline, because that connection is also important. Just doing a class, for me, like I said earlier, it's all about being inspired by the way the person lives. So that I don't think is very easy to tell through a class. It's only when we spend time with that person. And also, I feel like energetically, it's very different when it's in a studio or in a different space rather than online. But I still believe that online is the way forward, and most of it is definitely going to happen.
Yeah. And that's just the trend that we're seeing. People are just so used to, oh, my phone is right here. Let me just log into a Zoom class and like get on it. But I think what you said is really true, that unless we have that physical interaction or we're in their presence, we may miss some subtle traits or qualities that they have, which, there are some things that we can't pass on through the screen. So I think that's an important point that you mentioned, that we do need to experience things offline for just those traits and those qualities.
Yeah, and people are they're done with, I think, online.
Yeah, there's like some segments of, I don't know whether it's introverts and extroverts or what it is, but you see like a lot of people sticking with online, and some people are like, bus, don't give me one more online class. So I don't know, it's a like unique mix of people doing different things.
I think later also it should be a good mix, because I've seen too much screen time and generally a lot of body ailment,
back, neck,
everything it's becoming quite common now. So I think if we can bring in a good mix, that would definitely.
Yeah. That's really true. And okay, now we're coming to the last two questions. So the second last question is going to be about, if you could give any three pieces of advice, and these can be like things you've learned or, just quotes that you live by, but any three things that you feel could really change someone's life through what you tell them, what would those three things be?
So, firstly, advice I've stopped giving it.
No, now we're asking. Now we want it.
Like I said earlier, no, just telling people to do something is very difficult. So unless they come in seeking that information. So I would say some things that have helped me are not to expect anything from anything, be it a practice or from people around. I think that has really helped with a lot of different things. So expectations, being able to manage expectations. The next would be just enjoying the process, not being forced into anything, whatever it is. And three, right? The last one would be to spend some time in any form of introspection, just to understand, just to get a little more clarity.
Yeah, on yourself. I think the like point number three is again so important because it's not spoken about enough. I mean, now it is with the pandemic, but I think earlier it would just be like, go achieve your goals and make a mark on the world, and no one's talking about looking inside or introspecting. So I think that's a really important point. And like when you said expectation management, has that been challenging for you when you initially? Because I think when we grew up, we have the rose tinted glasses, and we're like, everything's going to be amazing, and I'm just, the first time I do something, I'm going to succeed at it. So how have you, like, has it been challenging managing your expectations? Was there something like an incident that taught you it's better to manage your expectations, or like, how did that learning come to you?
So initially, I was very much about, I was very stubborn. I wanted to get everything done a certain way, or everything had
Same.
to be a even as a kid. So if somebody said, we're going out to this place, that had to happen. Otherwise, I would throw up the whole house. Yeah. So I think that way it's helped me a lot over the years to understand that you can't really expect somebody to react a certain way or do
Yeah.
things a certain way, or even with something that we really work towards. I believe in some sort of energy which is guiding us in a certain way. So I feel like a lot of things that haven't worked for me, now when I look back, it's helped me so much because I was able to explore a lot of other things. So I believe that everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
I don't think too much about it. Even if I've put in a lot of work into something and it doesn't work out, I know that, okay, maybe something else is on the way, or I can learn something out of it.
Yeah. And I think that's something that only I think comes through actually experiencing it and then, looking back and connect. Because I remember when I was younger and people say, don't worry, everything happens for a reason. I'll be like, no, how can how can I get low marks on a test for a reason? What's the reason? So I know what you're saying, that it only comes with certain amount of experiences, and I think a little bit of maturity, I think by age, or after a certain point where we can look back and say, oh, if that hadn't happened, this wouldn't have happened. So I think, yeah, we learn over time. And I think that once we learn to just enjoy like abhyas and vairagya, what we learn, that if the process is enjoyable enough, then we don't need that validation metric that we get from the like result or the success.
Exactly, yeah. That concept of karma yoga also.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. Okay, and that brings us to our last question, which is, any sort of message or advice that you haven't covered in this interview so far that you just want to say, and like it can be a monologue, can be like a paragraph that you want to share with people, just something that you would like to share with the world that you want to just convey to people.
I would say, again, try to understand, spend some time finding a little clarity on anything. So anytime you want to take 2 steps forward, just try to understand, where you're going and where this is coming from, the intention behind that action. And another would be just to be curious about it, about a lot of different things. Try to learn different things from people around and situations, or it can also be things from nature. There's so much to learn from nature as well. So be curious about the whole universe and life in general. And yeah, I feel like that's already too much.
No, I think that's great. I think sometimes, we're not curious and we get so used to, oh, life is like this, this is how everything is, and we
We like
don't
to know everything. So then there's no room to really learn more or try to improve one's life.
Yeah, and we get that sort of know-it-all attitude, like you said, where we're like, everything's like this. I already know this, and then there's no growth happening. So I 100% agree with you that the minute we think we know everything is when things can start going downhill for us. So always be curious is a good message to leave people with, and I think that's something people will definitely take away from this interview. So I want to just say thank you for, taking time out. I know Wednesday is a busy day for you, but thank you for taking some time out and speaking to everyone. And I think so many people have been inspired by you, say through Cure.fit, through your social media, through all the things that you do in the digital and the offline world. So I just, in case more people want to find you and they're watching this interview, what is the best way to reach out to you, and how would you want people to connect with your community?
So you can just find me anywhere. The best would be if we can connect in person, because that's my favorite way of interacting with people. But otherwise, there's always Instagram. But if it's something related to work, then I would prefer email.
Yeah.
So that would definitely help.
Okay.
And it gets lost.
Yeah, because there's so many DMs, and then it's just like, oh my God, I don't know which one is which. But no, so you can follow Caro at Yoga Caro on Instagram, and she has a lovely page. There's so much to learn from each post, and they're also like really pretty pictures. So definitely go check it out and follow her, and I'm sure you'll get a lot of value out from there. So thanks once again, Caro, for being with us, and I hope to be in Bangalore and see you in person soon at some point.
But it's so beautiful to connect with you. And
Yeah.
absolutely lovely. I love what you're doing, and I'm sure you're going to change a lot of lives through this. So.
Thank you, Caro. That means a lot. So really good to see you again, and I will hopefully catch you really soon. So thanks once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste.